Hello everyone, welcome to Newsflash episode 336. Today we are live from our studios here today, and we're talking about the Taliban and Trump's Taliban Hangout gone wrong. He was going to have him over with Afghanistan's leadership to Camp David for some peace talks. Didn't go as planned. Take a look at the aftermath of Dorian in the Bahamas. The Democrats get tough on impeachment. Joe Biden claims that he did not know a fossil fuel executive was hosting a fundraiser for him, even saying at this fundraiser that he doesn't take fossil fuel money when the guy running it was a fossil fuel executive. We also got other stories and a question for our guest today, who is James Stanley. James, thank you so much for coming back with us today. We got a great stories lined up for you today. So glad you were able to come back with us on the show.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, let's get right into it, starting with this top story. It's very interesting. You don't see this happen a lot about this drama over the Taliban. Deeper disagreements are stopping this meeting. President Trump blamed a recent Taliban attack for his decision to call off nearly year-long negotiations with insurgents. They were going to have him at a Camp David summit meeting. Try and make some peace talks. So yeah, the Taliban, they kind of ruined that apparently in the eyes of President Trump with a attack recently. Talks that once seemed on the verge of a breakthrough had hit a wall over how the deal should be finalized and announced, which is what it could have been, which was supposedly what this breakdown in talks was about, with the president himself showing more engagement in the talks in the recent weeks after a boiling criticism of a deal that was finalized, quote-unquote, in principle. The Trump administration had set in motion a daring gamut, which is fly insurgent leaders and Afghanistan leader Ashraf Ghani to the American soil. So they were literally going to invite the Taliban onto the shores of America. And a lot of Democrats especially have been very opposed to this. And I mean, I kind of, to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of a little bit unsure about this because, again, it's good to have peace. It's good to resolve the region. It's good that he's not, again, trying to start another war out of this, which is, I'm sure, is what some people in the establishment, some Democrats too, would probably do. Like, this is probably the course of action that they would take. But the thing is, at least he tried to, I definitely cannot hit him over the head for at least trying to do some negotiations, but I can only imagine what the Republicans' reaction would have been if Barack Obama had done this. This is just, again, one of the crazy parallels for the Obama administration versus the Trump administration in terms of what each person can, quote unquote, get away with. What's your opinion on this? Do you think it's wise that he did this? Do you think it's a good move here? Or do you think it's a little too much?
To be honest, I think that what President Trump did by backing off of it wasn't bad of an idea. I mean, the fact that he was already bringing up in the first place, I mean, you can't really walk away from your own problems in some sense. And he kind of started this problem that he made for himself. I think that it was good of him to back off of it, but I'm a little bit questionable on how this agreement was going to be put out with the Taliban. I mean, yeah, I do believe in diplomacy, definitely is the best way to do things without war, and I see his point there, but, I'm a little bit hesitant of having someone like the Taliban come here. It's different if we have Saudi Arabia come, but to have a terrorist organization come onto the land of the U.S. is a little bit different and a little bit more controversial, if I have to bring that word into this, because it is a little bit controversial.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely very controversial and very daring.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, daring, that's a perfect word for it, definitely, because, I mean, if you think about some of them Trump probably wanted to get an agreement, but I guarantee that some of the people who were in the Taliban probably didn't really care. They were probably just here to just be here for the purpose of it.
And kind of the publicity helps as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and funny enough, I mean, some of the members of his own party had said this is a horrible idea. I mean, Liz Cheney, we were talking about her a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to read what she had said today. So she said, Camp David is where America's leaders meant to plan our response after al-Qaeda, supported by the Taliban, killed 3,000 Americans on 9/11. No member of the Taliban should set foot there ever. The Taliban still harbors al-Qaeda. The president is right to end the talks.
Yeah,
so in a way, she goes.
That kind of, as you said before, like that kind of completely ignores the fact that he was going to have the meeting in the first place, knowing all of this very, very important, very bad information.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, it's kind of funny how she literally first goes out completely against it, almost in a way attacking President Trump. But then she kind of backtracks and says, ooh, this might be a little too harsh, and says, well, you know, he did the right thing by getting out of it.
Yeah, like she's kind of editing herself like mid-tweet almost.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of incredible to watch.
She's getting her finger off the trigger in some sense. But, I mean, it's just a little bit, definitely, that's just one interesting thing that I had to bring up, that she doesn't even have the skills to go against her own party leader and the president, which is just kind of interesting, especially on something that this controversial. And she even made it more into a more talking point, especially saying about how they shouldn't even step on American soil. I mean, she's already saying that it's a whole bad idea, but then let's just, back up and say, okay, well, President Trump was right to cancel the whole thing in the first place. But he was one, by the way, who brought this whole thing up. And she didn't even mention that once.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you didn't know, Camp David, it is the traditional presidential retreat, and it was a pretty big plan. Separate meetings with each side that kind of led to a grand announcement by Trump, according to Afghan, Western, and Taliban officials with knowledge of the peace talks. Americans were also rushing to finalize outstanding issues, including disagreements over prisoner releases and exchanges and stuff like that before the meeting that was supposed to take place today, Sunday, to September 8th. The Taliban leaders, however, having refused to negotiate directly with the Afghan government after the group had an agreement with the United States, the group had an agreement with the United States, had compared their proposal to the Americans, tricking them into political suicide. A senior Taliban leader says, "We promised there would be intra-Afghan talks once we finished our agreement with the Americans. If Trump and his administration think they would solve the confrontation between the government and the Taliban somewhere in Washington in a meeting, that's not possible because we do not recognize the stooge government." So they obviously, Taliban insurgent group, I believe, used to control the government, and now they want that back, and they don't recognize this government as legitimate, so it's definitely tough to bring them together. On Sunday, after the negotiating team held an emergency internal meeting in Doha, the Taliban said Trump's decision to cancel the talks would only have consequences for the United States. The group said in a statement it had received an invitation in late August to visit the United States and had put off its decision until the deal was finalized. So they first wanted to have a deal with American because it is a big risk for them, just as much as it is a big risk for President Trump. It's a big risk for the Taliban too. And if they're sending some of their top guys here, could be like, maybe, who knows? It could be some sort of a trap. Like, there's no way of guaranteeing that for sure. And they're not really a country, so they don't have that kind of negotiating prowess. Like, they don't have a really full army behind them. The group says more than anyone else, the loss will be for the United States. Their standing will be hurt. Their anti-peace position will be clear to the world, and their human and treasure loss will increase, and their political actions will come across as unstable. 20 years ago, too, we called for an understanding, but this remains our position today. So it definitely looks like the broad situation in the Middle East is not going to be improving anytime soon.
Definitely not. I mean, the division that they've had in that part of the region, part of the world actually, has been there for the longest of time. I mean, Taliban in Afghanistan, I mean, I understand that they want to try to almost fix the wounds that they have had between each other, but it's not going to be an easy thing to fix each other's relationship because they both have different perspectives on what they want to get, and they also have different goals. I mean, I think that that's what they really kind of need to realize before they can go ahead forward and say, okay, well, we're going to step back and we're just going to try to team up again and just be united.
Yeah, I think it's definitely very clear. It's very it's a good point. They definitely have different goals. They have different things they're trying to achieve, and peace isn't always at the top of the list. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation to navigate. But the good thing is there doesn't seem to be any kind of internal conflict coming at least in our future from what we understand at this point. And I do apologize because, of course, we have, if you haven't figured out by now, you're just joining us because we are live today. James Stanley is with us. He is the host, obviously, of Politalk and the JSPN founder and CEO there, running all the programs. So, James, it's a big fall season what do you have in terms of Talk and some of your other programs?
Oh, we got a pretty similar taste of the meal, I would have to say, this fall for our shows. We still got our main show, Political Talk, coming on. It's going to be premiering actually tomorrow night. We also still have our Plug-in Central show, Took Over Lights On, which is our show all about electric vehicles, everything you got to know about the future of driving, honestly, and vehicles. And then we also still have The Legacy of Tom Petty, which is for any Tom Petty fans out there. We play some concerts. It's going to be monthly now. That starts next Saturday, the 14th. Excuse me, this Saturday, the 14th. That's going to be our premiere date. It's going to be monthly to try to make it quantity over quality, because there's not too many concerts for Tom Petty, and we don't want to be rushing through them all. So we're going to be really slowing down on them, going through each and every concert, looking at which ones are definitely the best. But the big season that's going to be coming to JSPN definitely is going to be spring. We have our A Push to 5, which stands for Advanced Placement U.S. History, for any students who are taking that class. That class is going to be fully devoted to helping you get a 5 on the AP exam. We're going to teach you skills needed to get master and get a 5 on the LEQ, DBQ, SEQ, and also any important topics you need to remember for the multiple choice section. We'll also look at some major multiple choice questions that have continuously come on to test over the years, and we'll show you where and how you can actually almost do tips and tricks around the LEQ and DBQ, which is the most dreaded part of any AP exam. And we're going to have a lot of guests coming on our show this spring, a lot of A-Push students, former and current, and it's going to be just a great show. So, I mean, if anyone ever wants to come on, you could just more than welcome to email me, politalk50@gmail, or you can always just tweet at me at politalk50 if you ever want to come on to the show. I'll be more than happy to have you on.
Yeah, A-Push is always probably one of the most popular AP classes that's taken here in this country. And yeah, of course, SWRN will also be jumping into action. Just this past weekend, we had come out the episode for our American History season of our global podcast all about Period 1. Which is, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of about the arrival of Native Americans, or arrival really of the Europeans to America, Native American relations with them, and how things maybe did not turn out so well for them. So yeah, we'll be keeping that through all out the year as some of the content is outlined. Of course, people probably getting their quizzes in and all that stuff, so that's coming up. So we will have that for you. And also, though, just do want to take, before we move on more into our stories here, just a quick update for Newsflash in terms of scheduling programming. The Thursday, the biggest shows, I think, for Newsflash will be our Sunday episodes. Thursdays, we will not always be releasing an episode. We will I'll keep you posted on the episodes of the Wake Up, and of course on my Twitter at SPW272. You can follow me there about when we will be having these episodes, because it's not always going to be every Thursday, but it will be every Sunday. And we do have a lot of great guests coming for you, and I'm very pleased to announce, if you haven't heard the kind of leftist podcast host, Virgil Texas will be coming on September 22nd, who will be joining us on Sunday episode, I believe, 2 weeks from now, talking about the news. So it would be great to have Virgil Texas on for the wonderful podcast Chapo Trap House. And also, we will have soon, I believe next weekend, hopefully, we're praying to have Andy Cowles live from London to tell us what is going on with Brexit as well. So it's a peek ahead in Newsflash. But we do have to turn back to the news here, and really, really sad stuff going on in the Bahamas, as reports from the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian are dire in the Bahamas, with the death toll now at 43 and expected to rise in the coming hours and days. According to CNN, hundreds of Bahamians are still missing, likely buried in some of the rubble. That's really, really tough, because a Category 5 storm was sitting over the Bahamas, if you can think about this, for days on end. What have you heard, James, about some of this story and some of the recovery efforts, and how can Americans and the American government help? Because this isn't just like Puerto Rico. This is, again, it's another international country that we have to be dealing with here.
Oh, I mean, the whole situation out in the Bahamas was absolute disaster. I mean, looking at that map from what it was a Hurricane 5, when it first got over the Bahamas, it was moving at a speed of roughly 4 miles per hour. Then it started to slow down.
Even
and the
more,
reason,
yeah.